1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
Breaking news, welcome to NTD Newsroom. A shooter opens fire at an army base in Georgia. 5 soldiers are wounded. President Trump raises the tariffs on India to 50%. What it has to do with the war between Russia and Ukraine. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff meets Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The topics the two discussed as Russia is facing an upcoming deadline. The Texas governor sues to remove State Representative Gene Wu from office. Wu led Democratic lawmakers out of the state to prevent a Republican redistricting push. President Trump claims certain banks have discriminated against conservatives. What needs to be done to prevent debanking? We talked to a finance professor. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is removing the age gap or cap for people applying to join the agency. Tens of thousands of people are reportedly applying for roles.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. An active shooter was reported today at Georgia's Fort Stewart, home to the Army's 3rd Infantry Division. The base commander had ordered a lockdown. Fort Stewart is about 225 miles southeast of Atlanta and 40 miles southwest of Savannah. Law enforcement responded to reports of a possible shooting this morning at the base's 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team Complex. The suspected gunman was arrested about 30 minutes later. The lockdown has been lifted for the rest of the base. The Army said casualties included 5 soldiers who are being treated. The FBI's Savannah Field Office said it was assisting the Army's Criminal Investigation Division. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp said his office was in contact with law enforcement. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt posted on X saying President Donald Trump has been briefed on the shooting. India now faces a 50% U.S. tariff. President Trump is raising the tariff rate by 25% to punish India for buying Russian oil. In an executive order today, Trump said India's government is, quote, currently directly or indirectly importing Russian Federation oil. In an earlier interview, Trump also criticized India for fueling Russia's war machine. India is one of the largest U.S. trading partners. Last week, the president announced the initial 25% tariff. Today's announcement comes as a larger executive order addresses the threats of the Russian government to the United States. Meanwhile, Apple is investing $100 billion into domestic manufacturing. A White House spokesperson touted the investment, which President Trump is expected to announce later today. The spokesperson said, quote, today's announcement with Apple is another win for our manufacturing industry. The official added that the investment will, quote, simultaneously help reshore the production of critical components to protect America's economic and national security. Apple's latest pledge would bring its total U.S. investment to $600 billion. Apple said in February it would spend $500 billion in U.S. investments in the next 4 years. The financial commitment will include a factory in Texas for artificial intelligence servers. The investment is also expected to add about 20,000 research and development jobs across the country. President Trump is threatening to federalize control of Washington, D.C. after a brutal assault in the nation's capital. Trump is criticizing the city's crime laws as being too lenient. Here are the details.
This is a big one here.
President Trump is threatening to put Washington, D.C.'s governance under federal control. The warning came after a man was violently assaulted in the city. Trump said the victim was a Department of Government Efficiency staffer. Elon Musk posted on X that the man was beaten while trying to stop a gang from assaulting a woman. According to the latest statistics, crime in D.C. is down 35% from last year. But Trump says the city is still out of control.
Either they're going to straighten their act out in the terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run.
Trump posted on Truth Social that D.C. must be safe, clean, and beautiful, adding that local laws on prosecuting minors need to change. Trump called for offenders as young as 14 to be tried as adults. Congress does have the power to override D.C. laws under the Constitution, though it rarely does so. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser's office did not immediately comment on Trump's suggestion. On Tuesday, Trump also said he would soon make a decision about who will replace Federal Reserve Governor Adriana Kugler. She is resigning early from her term and will exit the central bank on August 8th.
I'll be making that decision before the end of the week, and we'll either decide on one for permanence or the 4-month period, the term.
Trump also said he has narrowed the list for a new Fed chair once current chair Jerome Powell's term ends. Trump said current candidates include economic advisor Kevin Hassett and former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh. Trump earlier in the day said in an interview with CNBC that he had removed Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent from consideration because Bessent wanted to remain in the top Treasury job. And with a 2028 Los Angeles Olympics on the horizon, Trump signed an executive order Tuesday establishing a White House task force for the Games.
And the LA Olympics is shaping up to be a wonderful moment for America. It's going to be incredible. It's so exciting. And with today's action, I'm directing the Department of State, the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the Secret Service, the Department of Transportation, and many other departments and agencies to use every tool at their disposal to ensure a fantastic, safe, and beautiful event.
Trump said the task force is made up of cabinet members and government agencies and will coordinate federal, state, and local government work on transportation.
A vandalized monument is getting a new lease on life. A statue of a Confederate general toppled during the 2020 riots over the death of George Floyd will be reinstalled in Washington, D.C.'s Judiciary Square. The statue of Confederate General Albert Pike was forcibly removed and vandalized in June 2020. It was the only outdoor monument to a Confederate leader in Washington. The Park Service announced yesterday it would seek to return Pike's statue to its pedestal by October. It cited 2 executive orders concerning the District of Columbia's beauty and the government's advocacy of American history as reasons for their decision. The District of Columbia's delegate to Congress, Eleanor Holmes Norton, called the decision odd and indefensible. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff completes a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow today. The talks come just 2 days before a deadline for Russia to strike a peace deal with Ukraine. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pastar has more on the meeting.
A motorcade believed to be carrying Special Envoy Steve Witkoff left the Kremlin on Wednesday. Witkoff met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin's foreign policy advisor says Wednesday's talks lasted for 3 hours.
When
it comes to its topics, first of all, it was the Ukraine crisis. And the second topic was possible development of strategic cooperation between the U.S. and Russia.
He added that Witkoff delivered messages from President Trump while also receiving new information from Russia. But he declined to give more details for now.
Trump has not been told about the results of this meeting yet, so I would refrain from more detailed comments.
Wednesday's talks come just 2 days before a deadline for Russia to strike a peace deal with Ukraine. Trump says he'll increase economic pressure on Moscow if no deal is reached by Friday. That's, for example, by imposing secondary tariffs on any country doing business with Russia. The Kremlin condemns the tactic, claiming it's illegal. Trump says such measures are needed to stop Russia's war machine. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The latest in the Texas redistricting battle. The state's governor and attorney general are pushing to get absent Democrats ousted from office. And a U.S. senator from Texas is asking the FBI to get involved. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the updates.
Dozens of Democrat state lawmakers from Texas remain out of state.
There being 94 members present, a quorum is not present.
Facing arrest warrants and now possible removal from office.
I'll pay that price for America. Yes. And I think everyone behind me would say they would do the same. Right.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott is asking the state Supreme Court to remove the state House Democratic chair, Jean Wu. The governor wrote, Texas House Democrats abandoned their duty to Texans, and there must be consequences. As for the other Democrats, the attorney general is giving them until Friday to return, or he'll seek to remove all of them from office.
redistricting happens every 10 years after a census. And so this is not the regular way that we do redistricting.
Their goal is to block a Republican-backed redistricting vote that would give the GOP a competing chance in Democrat-held districts.
These voters in these districts won by Trump, they don't have the ability to vote for their candidate of choice now because they're in congressional districts. They're in a Democrat district as opposed to a district won by Trump.
If Democrats return for the vote, the map is almost certain to be approved. So they're trying to run out the clock.
We have to know our lines by maybe October. So the time is ticking, and it's ticking away really fast. That is why you see the Attorney General as well as the governor getting very aggressive, because you can't just change the lines and you can't change the primary without the Democrats being there and providing a quorum.
U.S. Senator John Cornyn of Texas has asked the FBI to help arrest them for return to Texas, writing, "Federal resources are necessary to locate the out-of-state Texas legislators who are potentially acting in violation of the law." Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
As Republicans push to redistrict congressional maps in Texas, Democrats are looking at another state, California. California Representative Joey Lofgren says she's seen a conceptual map. She claims it could flip 5 of the 9 Republican seats in her state. It comes after Governor Gavin Newsom asked lawmakers to draw a new map to put before voters in a November special election. But he has said that will only happen if Texas goes through with its redistricting. Right now, the Lone Star State is in gridlock on the issue. Democrats there have sat out sessions, preventing the quorum necessary to adopt new maps. Those maps could give the GOP 5 more congressional seats. And joining us now to discuss the latest on the Texas redistricting push is Bart Marcois, former presidential campaign policy advisor and former career diplomat, and George Carrillo, former Democratic candidate for governor of Oregon and former director of social determinants of health for Oregon. So Bart, I'll start with you today. Governor Greg Abbott has now asked the Texas Supreme Court to remove State Representative Gene Wu from office. So Abbott calls him the ringleader, apparently, of the Democratic exodus. For Americans eager for more dialogue and, good old-fashioned debate in politics, this entire saga might be very disappointing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is disappointing because the essence of democracy is debate and voting. And the Democrats in the state legislature in Texas have fled the state rather than continue to engage in debate and voting. They say, if we can't win, we're not going to play at all. And, let's keep in mind what's actually happening here. The state legislature is creating 5 new majority Republican districts. That's what everybody's talking about. But they're also creating, these are majority Hispanic districts. This is a vote of confidence in the Republican appeal to the Hispanic population of Texas. This is not some, weird gerrymander. They're going and they're creating majority Hispanic districts in a state that did not have them before. And that's what the Democrats are fleeing rather than stay and vote about. It's a real shame.
So George, redistricting is a very normal and common thing in our democratic system. So what are your thoughts on all this?
So my thoughts on this is that this is strange to be happening, before the Census Bureau, but Texas has done this before. In 2001, they went into special session and redrew the district lines before the Census Bureau data came out. And, I can appreciate from my colleague here acknowledging the presence of the Hispanic vote in Texas. But let's be clear here. Republicans aren't playing a fair game here. They're doing things behind closed doors. They know that they can redraw these lines. They're doing it outside of that 10-year window. This isn't about giving more power to Latinos in Texas. This is about securing Congress for the president. So this is not about democracy. This is about special interest towards the president.
So Bart, are Democrats and Republicans putting the American people first?
Oh, I think both parties are trying to put their vision for the American people first. But what you're seeing here is suddenly the Republican Party is pushing back against what has been done to them for 35 years by the Democrats, that Republicans have rolled over and just taken it. It's true that that it's unusual to do this in the middle of the decade, but what drove this is a Supreme Court decision that said, hey, you know, when you last redistricted, there were restrictions on you and you were not allowed to draw the district lines the way that you wanted to. The Supreme Court struck down that law that said you couldn't do what you wanted to after the 2020 census. And now, in light of that Supreme Court decision, the legislature is saying, okay, now we're going to do what we wanted to do back then. We're going to do what all these Democrat states have done for 35 years. You know, it's ironic that they fled to Illinois, which has 17 congressional seats, 14 of which are occupied by Democrats, although there are 43% to 45% Republicans in the state. Where's the fairness there? Massachusetts, 9 congressional seats, all occupied by Democrats, 0 Republicans, although there are 43% Republicans in Massachusetts. Maryland, 7 out of 8 occupied by Democrats. Oregon, I looked it up in honor of my friend Mr. Carrillo here. Oregon, 5 out of 6, although 43% of the voters in Oregon are Republicans. That's not fair, and people know it's not fair. And Texas, 65% of the well, let me give the actual numbers. There are 25 Republicans and 13 Democrat seats, and 56% of the state votes Republican. So there is a slight edge for Republicans there, but nothing like in these states that are controlled by Democrats. So, you know, it's just they're pushing back, and for once, Republicans are playing hardball, and Democrats aren't used to that.
Okay, George, if we put aside the partisanship, putting aside the back and forth, the accusations on one side of the aisle towards the other side, what is the solution that actually puts Americans first?
Yeah, so I want to be able to comment on what my colleague had said here. I think that the numbers speak for themselves, especially in Texas, as Texas is leaning more Democratic than it ever has before. Their Republican voter turnout is 53%, but yet they hold 66% of the congressional seats. And actually in Oregon, the Republican Party only represents 33%. And so the numbers aren't quite there to justify my colleague's position on this. But I think that let's get back to Texas here. With Texas, under the Texas Constitution, is that this needs to have about equal population, compactness, continuity, and county preservation. And when you look at the way Texas has drawn its lines, it is not the spirit of the law. It does it about population, but not compactness. It's not about continuity. It's not about preservation of its county. And right now, with redrawing the lines, again, this fire was stoked by the president because he's in fear that he is going to lose control of the House. And so, again, this is not about voters. I think if we want to talk about democratic states where the people have risen, like in California and New York, they have independent commissions that actually determine those lines. In California, they have 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 5 independents that do that. And so that is actually working for the people. It shouldn't be politicians that are working primarily in whether it's a blue state or a red state. I think that's completely irrelevant. It should be an independent body that's looking at the true purpose of having fair elections and having proper representation in those elections. We need to get back to election integrity. And this course of action by the governor is not. And what Republicans are doing right now in Texas is doing what they can do in order to stand up for the people, so that way we can have a fair election and we can have people that actually represent those communities and have what the Constitution says. Meet all the requirements, just not what you want to pick and choose. And just because it's legal doesn't make it right.
I mean, you're absolutely right. We need to have fair elections. And Bart, let me go to you now. We have a map here of Maryland's 3rd Congressional District from several years ago. This map gained widespread attention at the time. Can you add more to that?
Sure. When you look at that, you realize that those are far-flung sections of the state. This is a map drawn by Democrats to deprive Republicans of seats. There were a couple of extra seats, and they needed to squeeze as many Republicans out. And they squeezed all the Republicans out, and there's now just 1 seat left. And you'll notice here that there are lines that are 1 street wide that go for miles, connecting one section to another. And these things are, you know, I'm trying to wave my hands around and point at the section here. You see 4 sections that are separated by there is no contiguous connection there. I agree completely with Mr. Carrillo. I think we should have a compactness, a contiguous connection. There should be some semblance of community in a congressional district. It could be done. And maybe what will come of this, I mean, California, they've squeezed all but 9 out of the 52 seats. They're less than 20%, although again, they have over 43% of the vote in gubernatorial and presidential elections. If we could get both sides to drop their arms and have everybody draw lines that are roughly recognizable as real communities, I think that would help everybody.
So George, I think you would agree with me if I say that in today's political climate, it's very difficult to redistrict in a way that everyone can agree upon. So where do we go from there?
Well, I think it has to go to the independent commissions. I really, truly believe that it needs to be taken out of the hands of politicians and given back to the people. Let the people decide, let's follow our laws, and let's have some consistency throughout the country and what this looks like for congressional seats, that this is not politically motivated. Because regardless, if this was a Democratic state trying to do this in order to give more support towards, let's say the Biden or Harris administration, I would be saying the same thing. It's not right. We need to do what's right for the people. We have to acknowledge, like in Texas also, like 95% of its growth, it comes from its urban centers. So if they're going to redistrict and they're going to push this through, then let's let those numbers reflect how they're actually mapping those out. And let's start holding them accountable. And that's where I asked the Hispanic community, you are the sleeping giant. You are 40% of the population in Texas. You have to participate. If they get it wrong, vote them out of office. This is your state. This is your vote. Start to wake up, because you will determine the next election happening in the midterms in 2026.
So Bart, yesterday...
I agree, and make sure they vote Republican.
Okay, all right, Bart. Republicans have complained about Democrats' efforts to redistrict. Democrats have complained about Republicans' efforts to redistrict. And we were talking about this yesterday, and we were questioning if there even is a moral high ground here.
No, this is not a question of morality. It's a question of political back and forth. I don't think very many people. I used to look to political leaders for morality, and I stopped 20 years ago, and I was one of the last holdouts because I was still very naive. I'm not looking to politicians for morality, but I am looking for fairness. And I think Mr. Carrillo is right. An independent commission would be great in all 50 states. But what I see is Gavin Newsom standing up and saying, okay, we have an independent commission drawing lines. If Texas goes through with this, I am going to abolish that independent commission and go to a partisan commission. And I don't see how he's going to squeeze 5 more seats out of the paltry 9 that are left. It's 9 against 43. I don't see how he's going to squeeze 5 more seats out of it. But I mean, this goes back to 1981 with the Phil Burton gerrymander, the famous, I mean, I wish he had been on our side. He was famous for his ability to draw maps. He famously drew a map of a state legislative district for his brother that had to be contiguous, and it was only contiguous at low tide. And at high tide, it was broken, but he pushed it through and got it through the courts and said it's contiguous at low tide, therefore it's a contiguous district. He was a brilliant strategist, but I think his map drawing and demographic calculating abilities were what led to the decline. I do wish that both sides would come to an independent commission, but as long as the other side isn't, we have to fight back. And the Texans are saying, hey, we were forced into an unfair disadvantage, and we now have a legal right to draw the lines the way we think is right in our state. And that's what they're doing.
Okay, George, we got to wrap up. I started with Bart, so you get the final thought.
Yes, thank you. It comes down to this. Gavin Newsom can't abolish the independent commission. It's embedded into their constitution. He can ask them to go into a special session and be able to do that, but to abolish it, it's going to take too much time. It wouldn't meet the requirements of the 2016 election. Same thing with New York. I think right now my message to Democrats is we've got to get on message. Let's change the laws where it needs to be changed. If we want independent commissions throughout the country, let's do it through the legislative route. Let's not start precedents that every time someone is in power, that we're going to be changing maps. Because if we do that, then it's not about voter power. It's about you just need a map majority. And that's not fair elections. And that's not the message that Democrats should be pushing. So let's not play into the hands of Republicans. Let them die by their sword. And let's do the right thing. Let's change legislation. Let's get independent commissions throughout the country. And let's make our elections fair.
Okay, we got to end it there. George, Bart, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Next, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. moves to cancel more than 20 mRNA vaccine contracts. Why Kennedy says the tech poses more risks than benefits for respiratory viruses. Stay tuned.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan green vegetable omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
I trod on my glasses yesterday and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way, and I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.
See now, pay later with Select Specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options only at selectspecs.com.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they can do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way. No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. Call now to lock in your rate and save big. Call 800-210-6422. 800-210-6422.
Amazing grace, how sweet the They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
The Justice Department has released an updated list of states, counties, and cities it considers sanctuary jurisdictions. Attorney General Pam Bondi says these sanctuary policies obstruct law enforcement and put citizens at risk. The list names 12 states the DOJ says refuse to comply with federal immigration authorities, including California, New York, and Illinois. It also includes 4 counties and 18 cities, including Los Angeles, Chicago, New York City, and Washington, D.C. The designations follow an executive order signed by President Trump in April. The DOJ says it plans to continue legal action against these jurisdictions. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, is removing an age cap for people applying to join the agency. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem told Fox News today that tens of thousands of people are applying.
As of today, we have over 80,000 applicants for those 10,000 positions already. People and patriots across this country that say, we want to join, we want to help and be a part of this effort. It's overwhelming to see the amount of response and support that our ICE officers have gotten.
Noem says activists have been harassing ICE officers and trying to harm them. She praises the agency for continuing to do its job and working to uphold the law. Noem adds that the efforts to hire 10,000 new officers has been successful so far. Plans for a new immigration detention center in Indiana. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed the facility will increase ICE's detention space by 1,000 beds, located at the Miami Correctional Facility near Bunker Hill. It's been dubbed Speedway Slammer in reference to Indiana's racing history, hosting the Indianapolis 500 every year. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem thanked Indiana Governor Mike Braun on X. Noem urged illegal immigrants to self-deport rather than risk ending up at the new detention facility. DHS says the Speedway Slammer will be home to the worst of the worst arrested by ICE. Democratic State Representative Victoria Garcia Wilburn told Newsweek that phrases like Speedway Slammer make light of grave moments and criticize the move for instilling fear in immigrant communities. mRNA vaccine work is taking a hit. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says 22 mRNA vaccine development contracts are being canceled and redirected. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more.
HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that mRNA vaccine development contracts are being canceled, saying the vaccines fail to protect effectively against upper respiratory infections like COVID and flu. Kennedy says mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral protein, usually a single antigen.
One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective. This dynamic drives a phenomenon called antigenic shift, meaning that the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine.
The HHS chief says millions of people caught the Omicron variant of COVID despite being vaccinated because a single mutation can render mRNA vaccines ineffective.
After reviewing the science and consulting top experts at NIH and FDA, HHS has determined that mRNA technology poses more risks than benefits for these respiratory viruses.
The HHS secretary says the U.S. will now prioritize the development of what he called safer, broader vaccine strategies.
Like whole virus vaccines and novel platforms that don't collapse when viruses mutate.
The 22 canceled projects are worth nearly $500 million. Many infectious disease experts say the mRNA technology used in vaccines is safe and say it slowed the 2020 coronavirus pandemic. They warn that future pandemics will be harder to stop without the help of mRNA. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
New York City health officials are investigating 67 cases of Legionnaires' disease in central Harlem. The city says 3 people have died and the cases are clustered in 5 zip codes in the area. Legionnaires' disease is a severe form of pneumonia caused by inhaling water vapor containing Legionella bacteria. Officials say the infection likely spread from cooling towers on buildings in central Harlem. The city health department first announced the cluster on July 25th. Health officials say people over 50, smokers, or those with lung conditions are most at risk. Residents with flu-like symptoms are urged to seek medical care immediately. President Trump is accusing certain banks of having discriminated against conservatives. He says he will sign an executive order this week aimed at penalizing those banks. Joining us now to discuss is Michael Busler, professor of finance at Stockton University, economist and public policy analyst. Michael, always good to see you. So conservatives, including Trump, of course, have accused banks like Bank of America of closing their accounts after the 2020 election. What could an enforcement mechanism look like to prevent debanking?
So this is a difficult problem. There's no hard data that really shows what happened here. But President Trump himself, and I've heard other corporations say the same thing, that banks just closed their accounts, canceled their business, and told them to withdraw their funds. And it looked like for no apparent reason other than their political views. So somehow Trump has got to come up with a way, some kind of an executive order, or maybe Congress will pass a law. It's kind of already illegal to discriminate against a company for political views. But Trump has got to come up with some way, and this is not going to be easy, because if a bank says, look, we find it's in our best interest not to have this company as a customer anymore, we'll have to prove that the reason is for their political views. So this is very difficult to do. Typically, the way these things are enforced is that the bank regulators who regulate the banking industry very heavily, somehow there has to be a mechanism, or there will be a mechanism put in for the regulators to be able to prevent something like this from happening. But again, it's going to be very difficult to prove and to enforce.
Do you think oversight is needed, federal oversight in this situation? And is there any precedent for government interference or intervention, rather, in banking access?
Yeah, so as I said, the banking industry is highly regulated because so much money is involved, and we have what's called a fractional banking system, where only a fraction of deposits are actually in the bank. The rest of it is lent out. So it's very heavily regulated to make sure banks don't collapse. So I don't know of anything in the past where the regulators have said, look, you can't dismiss a customer for political reasons, although again, that's illegal. The bank is free to say who they want to do business with, but if you're dismissing them for these political reasons, that technically is illegal. Just like you can't drop a client, just for some demographic characteristic that they have, their minority or something. You can't drop a client for that. What ends up happening if the customer is suspended, then they have to file a complaint with the banking commission, and then the banking commission has to investigate. I think what's more likely to be done is that the regulators will just let them know, whatever you've been doing in the past, we don't approve of that anymore. And you can't dismiss a customer just for their political reasons, and somehow they're going to have to try to enforce that. It's not going to be an easy thing.
So I want to respond to a point you mentioned, that dropping a client for political reasons is illegal. Speaking in principle then, what is the difference between the federal government pulling funding from a group, an institution or entity, whatever, because the government disagrees with the actions or the ideology of this group, compared to when a private bank denies service for similar reasons?
Yeah, so it's a slippery slope here. The current administration doesn't want DEI rules enforced, and most companies are kind of going along with that. But suppose a company doesn't, and they say, look, we believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you can't tell us that we can look at different customers because we want to give favorable treatment to some because we believe in DEI. So it's very difficult. Here you're looking at saying, look, you can't dismiss a customer or give somebody favorable advantage for political views. And yet, on the other hand, you're saying you can't give favorable treatment because of some demographic characteristic. So you're bringing up a very good point. And if a bank is dropped, or a customer rather is dropped, and there's some kind of a case that goes to court, this could turn out to be kind of a hot topic. I don't think that's going to happen. Most of the banks, they kind of want to go along with what the administration says. And according to what President Trump says, the prior administration had it out for companies that have conservative views. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But the banks, I guess, sort of went along with what the Biden administration's banking regulators said. Now the banking regulators are going to say something different. And the banks typically want to go along with what the regulators say to avoid any conflict. But whether it's a difference between one view or another is a good point. I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
So the Epoch Times actually got a note from Bank of America, a statement that it doesn't discriminate based on political views, just pointing that out. But besides that, do you think financial institutions play a role in shaping or guiding cultural and political trends? And what is the role?
They're not supposed to. All they're supposed to do is hold the money of depositors, make loans, and provide other financial services. They're not supposed to really get involved politically with whatever administration is in power at the time. Now, even some companies, they're not supposed to either. Companies' primary goal is to make a profit for their stockholders by satisfying the needs of the consumers. But when companies start saying, like they did in the prior term, well, we're going to have more of this diversity, equity, and inclusion, when it ended up hurting corporate profits, then the stockholders said, well, listen, we got to forget doing that. Let's just go back to what the basic principles are. So again, this is a very, very difficult thing, but banks are supposed to give financial services and not have any political views. Now, the government does influence some of their lending. For instance, the government has these opportunity zones where there's very favorable tax treatment to somebody going in to develop in these areas, and they encourage the banks to make loans in that area. So the government does some of this, and again, you have to be careful about how much you want to do and how much not. The bottom line for banks is they have to maximize shareholder value, and whatever they do to maximize that value is what their function is, not necessarily to sway any political or cultural views.
Do you think Trump's executive order will make the banking system more neutral?
I think it'll start. It's mostly what the regulators will do. If they find that some of this pattern exists, and they may ask some of the customers that have been dropped by banks about it, and they may ask the banks, look, you canceled one of your customers. Why was that? Well, if it's because reasons that they defaulted on the loan and they've overdrawn their checking account and there's reasons for it, that's one thing. But if somebody is a very good customer, makes loan payments on time, never defaults on anything, keeps a nice balance in their checking account, and they're dropped for no apparent financial reason, then I think the regulators are going to look at that and try to find out why. If it turns out to be it's for a political reason, there will be some repercussions for the bank.
Well, all right, it's an interesting topic. There's a fine line here to walk, and it's quite difficult. But thank you for the conversation today, Michael.
Yes, thank you. My pleasure.
Coming up, Switzerland's president meets with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The meeting comes as Swiss officials try to avert a 39% tariff. Don't go away.
My mom and dad were traditional Asian parents. Now my father would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and then he would come home too tired to play with me. I tell my son, I love you every single day. Now my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. So I teased him the other day and I said, how come you never say that to me? And he said, you're too old now. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the material things, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious minute or moment.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here? I can see now.
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises. Just try it. Good. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling. You should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
Today, the Swiss president is meeting U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Their meeting in Washington, D.C. comes as Switzerland attempts to avoid a 39% tariff. The Swiss president and business minister are already in the U.S. for last-minute negotiations. To secure a better deal, Switzerland is considering buying U.S. liquefied natural gas. The U.S. is a leading buyer for Swiss watches, machinery, and chocolate. If the two nations fail to reach an agreement, those products will be subject to the 39% rate starting tomorrow. Negotiations follow a deal struck with the European Union last month. In exchange for a reduced 15% tariff rate, the EU has agreed to buy $750 million of liquefied natural gas, oil, and nuclear energy products over the next 3 years. And the EU has suspended a package of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. products following the deal signed with President Trump last week. While some EU leaders continue to criticize the agreement, others insist it reflects a strategic realism to preserve the U.S. military alliance. NTD's international correspondent David Vez reports from Paris.
The European Commission said it will suspend trade countermeasures worth more than $100 billion on Tuesday, delaying their August 7th start as talks continue on finalizing the deal made by EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and President Trump on July 27th. The deal imposes a 15% tariff on most European products imported into the United States, plus the purchase from EU of $750 billion of U.S. liquefied natural gas, oil, and nuclear fuel. The agreement continues to face criticism across Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron said it reflects the weakness of the continent, while German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil argued that the EU remains too weak on trade policy. Brussels says the decision was driven by what it calls strategic realism. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's negotiating leverage was limited due to Europe's dependency on US defense and energy following post-Cold War military cuts and the bloc's shift away from Russian gas. Former President of the European Economic and Social Committee Henri Mallos says while 15% is high, it can still work for French export sectors.
If we think about cosmetics brands or French champagne and wine, they have such an aura among the American public that sales may not fall. Some European producers could even offset the tariff's effect by adjusting prices. So yes, the deal is tough, but not prohibitive.
EU officials also said the deal is the real prize to maintain Trump's commitment to NATO and continued armed deliveries to Ukraine. EU Chief Trade said the deal is not only about trade, it's about security, Ukraine, and preventing further geopolitical instability. Malus says the investment from EU will lead to a reinforcement of the EU-US relationship and hopes for more return.
It's true there's been more U.S. investment in Europe than the reverse. Maybe the EU should have pushed harder for balance, but that may come later. I support building a new alliance, like a modern Schuman plan, tied to peace in Ukraine, Russia, Europe, and the U.S. hopefully that will lead to lower tariffs and more cross-investment. Because we have to remember the real challenge is defending ourselves against the Chinese communist regime and the threat it poses, both commercially and politically.
David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
U.S. health officials are warning travelers about a mosquito-borne illness affecting parts of Asia and other continents. The chikungunya virus has been spreading in China's Guangdong province this summer, with more than 7,000 cases reported according to state media. The CDC has issued a travel advisory urging citizens to avoid visiting the Chinese province, home to major business centers. The advisory also includes Bolivia and various island nations in the Indian Ocean. Chinese authorities are reportedly deploying drones, spraying disinfectant, and threatening fines for households that fail to clear standing water. They're adopting similar control measures to those during the COVID-19 pandemic, triggering public fear of a return of citywide lockdowns. Chikungunya fever is a viral disease mainly transmitted by mosquitoes. Its symptoms include fever, severe joint pain, muscle pain, headache, fatigue, and rash. There is no specific antiviral treatment for the virus. Deaths from the cases are rare but do occur, especially among vulnerable populations, such as those with underlying health conditions. Reports say authorities are forcing patients to stay in the hospital for a minimum of a week. A brief 2-week home quarantine period was reportedly dropped, since the disease is mosquito-borne and cannot be transmitted from person to person. More arrests as the Justice Department focuses on exports of sensitive technology. The DOJ has charged 2 Chinese nationals with illegally shipping AI microchips to China. This comes after a California tech company pleads guilty to a similar charge. NTD's David Lam reports.
The Department of Justice is cracking down on technology that's being smuggled out of the U.S. On Tuesday, DOJ announced the arrest of 2 Chinese nationals. The government accuses the 28-year-olds of exporting to China sensitive microchips used in AI applications. The suspects allegedly transferred tech worth tens of millions of dollars overseas from 2022 to 2025, including high-performance chips.
I think that's the most concerning thing is, figuring out, where all these leaks are and starting to patch things up. And that's going to be more on the enforcement side rather than the policy side.
Tech infrastructure designer Jared Navari says it comes down to culture and leadership. This to turn its army into a, quote, world-class military by 2049. This includes increasing its research and development and acquiring cutting-edge technology through theft. Last week, San Jose-based Cadence Design Systems pleaded guilty to illegally selling semiconductor design technology to a Chinese military university on the U.S. export blacklist.
That information, the hardware and the software, really the information itself, that's critical for creating supercomputer chips, right? That do fuel and run AI, that run military defense systems, so on and so forth. So it's highly, highly valuable, and it's highly dangerous in the wrong hands.
The two Chinese nationals charged by DOJ face up to 20 years in prison. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Japan today marked 80 years since the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. About 50,000 people observed a moment of silence at 8:15 a.m., the time the bomb was dropped. Here is Japan's Prime Minister.
As Prime Minister, I would like to offer my sincerest condolences to the souls of those who fell victim to the atomic bomb, and I would also like to offer my heartfelt sympathy to the survivors who are still suffering from the aftereffects of the atomic bombing. We must not repeat the tragedy that was brought upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is our country's responsibility, as the only nation that have suffered atomic bombings, to uphold the three non-nuclear principles and lead the global initiative for a world without nuclear weapons.
The bombing of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945 destroyed the city and killed 140,000 people. The U.S. bombed a second on Nagasaki 3 days later, killing 70,000. Japan surrendered on August 15th, ending World War II, and nearly 50 years of Japanese aggression in Asia. Though Japan's Prime Minister pledged to work for a world without nuclear weapons, the Japanese government has rejected the survivors' request to sign the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. A milestone in space. 13 years ago this week, the Mars rover Curiosity landed on the red planet. It took a series of complicated maneuvers never attempted before that led to the successful landing on Mars's Gale crater. The mission's goal has been to find out if any life forms might have existed on Mars. And the rover is also trying to collect information to figure out how the Martian climate changed from a planet that contained lakes and rivers into the frozen desert it is today. Curiosity is well equipped. It has a robotic arm to study rocks and cliffs. It also has a radio, cameras, and nearly a dozen science instruments. Coming up, White House border czar Tom Homan speaks on the newest migrant detention center in Indiana. Hear his message to reporters after the break.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they can do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way. No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. Call now to lock in your rate and save big. Call 800-210-6422, 800-210-6422.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation. but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind